Good morning, everybody. My name is Giacomo Delledonne. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in comparative public law at Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, a public higher education institution based in Pisa, Italy. First of all, I would like to thank my dear friend and colleague Luis Fernando Sgarbossa for inviting me to contribute to your research on subnational constitutionalism. When I was asked to provide a contribution to your seminar, I thought that a European viewpoint would be perhaps useful, would be perhaps a useful contribution. And in so doing, I think that an interesting topic is the place, if any, the role, if any, of subnational constitutions and subnational constitutionalism within regional states. What do I mean by regional state? It's a label that was coined by an Italian constitutional law scholar, Gaspare Ambrosini, in the first half of the 20th century. The label regional state was instrumental to describing constitutional evolution in such systems as the Second Republic of Spain or the regional system of the Italian Republic. It described a top-down federalizing process that was not entirely comparable with classic, long-established federations like the United States, Switzerland, or Germany. Regional states moved from different starting points and had distinctive traits. A significant feature of regional systems is that the sub-state units, their sub-state units, are not so much involved in the central law-making process or even in the procedures for amending the Constitution. If you think of Italy, the Italian regions are not involved in the discussion of constitutional amendments, and the Italian Senate, even in spite of the expectations of some of the founding fathers of the Republic, has never been considered as a regional second chamber. Now, my question is there any room for subnational constitutionalism in regional systems? In fact, the answer is yes, but, or perhaps no, but, and it makes it possible to show that there are some interesting differences between federations and regional states, at least in this respect. When you think of the constitution-making power of subnational units of federations, you think of a power that is unlimited in principle, if not for some homogeneity requirements. Just think, for instance, of the Republican Guarantee Clause in Article 4 of the United States Constitution, or the homogeneity clause of Article 28 of the German Basic Law of 1949. In regional states, and I will mostly consider Italy as a prime example of this, there is no subnational constitution-making power properly understood. Regions, however, have the power to adopt charters containing some basic principles, some basic organizational principles. They are known as statuti. According to Article 123 of the Italian Constitution, the regional statuti contain norms concerning the form of government and the basic principles for the organization of the region and the conduct of its business. They regulate the right to initiate legislation and promote referenda on the laws and administrative measures of the regional, as well as the publication of laws and regional regulation. All of this is far from being useless, is far from being irrelevant, but it's something different from the power to adopt a regional constitution. So the scope of the power to adopt these statuti is more limited than the constitution-making powers of the Swiss cantons or the German Länder. Furthermore, the statuti are supposed to be in compliance with the Constitution, full stop. That is, they are supposed to be in compliance with the spirit and the letter of all the provisions of the Constitution. This is more stringent, more demanding than the very basic homogeneity requirements that you can find in some federal constitutions. Of course, the comparative landscape is quite diverse, and you have very detailed homogeneity requirements, as it is the case of Austria or, of course, Brazil. Now, this is more or less the scope of these acts that are placed on the top of the regional systems of legal sources. In the last 30 years, there were some expectations that the role of the regional statuti would change. This was thought to be a possible result of the transformation of the country, the transformation of Italy into a quasi-federal state under the pressure of pro-autonomy and even pro-independence movement in the north of the country. In order to cope with these pressures and claims, the Constitution of the Italian Republic was amended, and among other things, the scope of the regional power to adopt statuti was slightly extended. And in the wake of this amendment, commentators, politicians, scholars thought that the statuti, the new statuti adopted in the wake, in the aftermath of the constitutional amendment, would be more similar to some kind of regional constitutions. For that reason, many regions entrenched bills of rights, policy principles, identity statements in their new statuti, as they saw this exercise in statuto making power as an opportunity to draft legal documents that would be more similar to regional constitutions. Those provisions were challenged by the state government before the Constitutional Court. The state government argued that though there was no place under the Constitution for those provisions within the regional statuti, since the statuti have to regulate the regional organs and the procedures for adopting laws and regulation at the regional level. The answer from the Constitutional Court was quite interesting, because it is based in theoretical terms on the idea that the statuti are something different from a regional constitution. The statuti have a limited competence, which is defined by the Constitution of Italy. Therefore, those provisions that regulate aspects that are foreign to the scope of this autonomy have no effect they're not unconstitutional. Therefore, the court refrained from striking them down, even in order to minimize the underlying political and legal conflict. So they're not unconstitutional, but they have no effect. They are mere statements that express the dominant feelings in a given regional community. And a regional law pretending to implement these norms concerning regional rights or regional identity, in turn, would be unconstitutional. So I'm getting closer to the end of my presentation, and what I would like to strike again is that some of the problems that recur, that are typical of a debate about subnational constitutions, are not foreign at all to a regional state like Italy, but the constitutional architecture of the system is clearly different, at least in this respect, from the constitutional architecture of a federation. Therefore, the role, the significance of the regional statuti within a regional system like Italy are clearly different from the constitutions of the American states or the constitutions of the German Länder. Of course, there was some political pressure to change these institutional conditions, but they were not based on a sound. They were not strongly rooted in the text of the Italian Constitution. So this testifies to the relevance of the idea of some kind of constitutionalism at the sub-state level, but also shows that there are some important, long-established differences between a regional state like Italy and a long-established federation. I would like to thank you for the contribute to, and of course, given the difficult conditions of these weeks, take care. Thank you, and see you in person in the near future. Goodbye.